Hello, I'm Dave Hillier, and this is a video in my Dataless Design Series. Today, we're going to look at how using Dataless components can give you a fast start for your start forms. This session is split into two videos, and this is the second video, and picks up where we left off. Today, we're going to show how easy it can be to add field level audit to your designs. By way of a quick recap, we are working on this case record. So far, we have added Dataless components for displaying the priority and choosing the status on our start form. Next, we're going to continue to work on the audit history. This record will let us log what happened, when, and what was changed in the fields. Now, when we changed this from a form layout to a section layout, we lost our submit buttons. Let's change that now because I wanted to replace those anyway. So what we're going to use is these audit fields. So we're going to add to our update form the ability to audit log the changes in values to the different fields. And this is done with one of these Dataless components. So there's a light version and a full version, which has just a different amount of config on the submit button. The light should be all we need for today. And I already have my audit history record created. As of 23.2, you can have Appian create this audit history record for you, and you get some out-of-the-box, easy to configure event auditing capabilities. This can add to that by the addition of a details field. You can then also log the value changes in the fields. So let's fill this out. And the record ID is our reference. This will be our case ID in this case. We're telling the audit block where we want to store this in our audit history table. Where did the event happen? So we've got our where field. And this will be the friendly name of our record. So we'll just call this case details, and we'll actually set this field later on in this component. So who did it? What they did, that the action was, and the details of it. This is what the block is really generating. And of course, all importantly, when it happened, our timestamp. So now we provide it a friendly name for this particular event that we're auditing, and this is we're changing the case details. We're changing the case, and the action we're taking is to update details, let's say. Submit button label, we'll call this a save button, I think. We can add some save intos here if we want to, and we want to tell it about our data. So this is how it takes the data to do the comparison between what's been updated. Now it wants to know which field in this record is the ID field. Now this is not the ID value that's in this record, it's the field reference. So this is our IBAN record is of type case, and its ID field is ID. So this record's data ID field is this field reference. And that's our configuration completed. Okay, so we've now got some submit buttons that will add audit history for us. We might also want to do things like I mentioned with our save into. If we want to add something like a save into the record that's modified by logged in user, and something like the records modified on. So we might want to add these to our button, so we can use it just the same as any other typical submit button. So we can update that, and this will run before the changes are made. Okay, so let's save that, and we can have a look at what that's going to look like in our front end. We can use the design layout that we did in the other video. And let's take one that's got some decent data on it, my second case, and we'll do the update case action on it. So now you can see that the action form has come a long way from where we started in a short period of time. And let's make some changes to this. This is actually meant to be, this case, when you look at the notes, is about delivery of chickens. So a new hen delivery, and I'm going to change the priority from medium to low in this case, and we'll click save. So now that's gone ahead and done some audit saving for us. Let's move across to the case itself. We can see it's changed. It's now called the new hen delivery that we just updated. But right now we've got no way of viewing that information. So we need another tab on our record to view our event history. So let's go ahead and add that. So I'm going to have a new view for my case, and I'm going to add a new view manually, and I'm going to call it audit history. And I want a new interface, so I might just put in a section layout, and I will push that through into an interface. So this is my audit history details, and we'll save that. Okay, so here's our section, and what we want to do in here is we're going to use our audit history display. And what it's going to need from the above record is, of course, our record ID. Let's drag that on our history display field. And it wants our audit information as before. So I've still got that in my paste, audit history. It wants to know where the case ID is stored. This is our record ID. It wants our record friendly name field. This was our where the change was made, who made the change, what they changed, and the details of the change. Oh, and finally, when they made the change. So the same configuration that we gave the previous block, and the ID field of our audit history record is the last one, so ID. Now it wants our case ID, which is all we're passing in. So this is the actual value of it. Show when and theme. So we'll leave those for now. Okay. So this is pulling back all audit history at the moment because we're not passing in an ID. But if we pass in the current case that we were on was case 2, I think. If we pass in the test value, case 2, and we can see what happened. I updated details where in the case, and if we expand this, then we can see that the name changed from my second test to new hen delivery, and the priority changed from 2 to 1. So that's a really great start, nice and easy. What we can do in here is it is expecting our record ID, and we've got that as our identifier. That'll be passed in. So if I just save this, we can see this in our front end now. We should get a new tab up here, audit history, and there's our audit history tab. Okay, so that's really good. Now there's one last thing that we can do to improve this, and that's because when we updated the priority, we've changed it from medium to low, and it's moved from 2 to 1. That's not very useful to the user, and that's because it's being passed through our relationship. So we need to give it a little bit more information so that it can actually see the value changes. And this requires us to rewire our form just a little bit so that we have that value showing in our RIBang record field, which is here, which is the one that that's being audited. So let's start by looking at what's in this, what's going into this record. If we return to the record type designer and look at our record actions, what the action that we're taking here is the update case. So update case is being fed by a query, and this get case by ID is the piece of the puzzle that we want. So we can have a look at this by putting it into our edit form, and we can test this out. So if I take a test and I put this in, it doesn't matter which one, get case ID 2, and we test this. If we expand the data that's being fed into here, so this is one we updated before, the new hen delivery, you can see that when we made these changes and between medium and low, we'll be able to see that the priority ID is changing. And that's what the audit block is picking up on. Unfortunately, in this data set that is being passed in to be audited, the actual values of low, medium, and high, or even in progress, the status is not being completed in this. So if we go back to that rule and open it to see what's being populated. So this is a simple query record type that's filling in this information, and if I put in our ID here, we can see this same data that's being driven back. But what we actually need to ask it for is to also give us the relationship data. So if I take our case and follow the relationships from case, and this is where records really come into its own, we can follow the path that we want to show. So it's the priority and also the status that we're interested in. The case dot relationship dot status. So now if I test this again now, you'll see that we get a little bit more information flowing through in our record. We get the reference data for these values of 2 and 1. So we can see that the priority ID 1 has a priority 1 is low, and status 2 is ID 2 in progress. So the relationship is now pulling the relevant reference data from our related records through. So if we save that now and return to our test and test this again, it should provide us, let me let it reevaluate it. Test that now. And our audit block's going to get a lot more information this time. It's going to get the status and the priority set. Now this is all good for our starting point. It now knows that these values are there. But when I change this, we've only wired it up to change the priority ID. So now this has changed to 2, but we can see that we've still got the same priority being saved here. So that means we have to update what we're doing in this a little bit. So let's open up the expression mode for this object. And what we're going to do is we're going to change what we're saving. In this case, we were choosing our values to be just the ID, and that's what we're updating. But we want to update the whole status object at this time. So these building blocks are quite good. If you leave the value as null, then it will return the whole priority object as the chosen result. And that instantly solves one of our issues, in that if we now, in our save into, if we save this into our bang record dot priority, now that will correct the priority bit down here, but now our priority ID isn't quite right. So here we'll have to change this to save the ID based on our save value, which will be indexed with the priority ID. Now this can get a little bit confusing because we're no longer in the context of the case here. Our save value is going to be of type case priority. So if I take the case, so on the ID, so I need to use the case priority dot ID field in order to populate that into my case priority ID foreign key. So that can be a little bit tricky to get your head around. But that will that's how we can move the ID across. So one last thing, now our value doesn't match our choice values because we've got an ID here, and the values are actually the whole priority object. So this just needs to change to be the same, and that could be in our relationship priority. So now our values are all line up, our priorities, and saving the ID and the priority. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, so let's have a look what we've got on the side here. So we're currently on priority ID 3, and our priority is high, and high matches. Let's change that to medium. And now we can see that our ID changes to 2, which matches the object medium. So now the data that we're going to pass into our audit button that's going to do the diff for us is now populated with all of the information that we need to be able to audit it correctly. Now we have to do the same thing for the drop down here if we want status to get the same benefits. So we can do that nice and easily as well. So let's change that to be the values are going to be null, and our save into is going to save into our record.status relationship, and then we'll use a save to populate the case ID with the save value with the status case status.id. Okay, so then we've seen it twice here. Let's just put our brackets in. Okay, so that should work now. We've got our value is let's change the value as well. So this is no longer status ID, but status. And then we have our three changes to make sure we're all aligned to the status object, the whole record, rather than just the ID when we select things. So let's test that. And now if we change our status, our status ID changes and our value changes. Okay, so let's save and try this in our front end again. Let's try our same case. We'll update it a second time, and this time we'll say there are a lot of chickens delivered, and we're going to change our status from low to high. They need attention right away, and we'll change our progress to not started as well, just to have a comparison. Okay, so let's pop back to our audit history, and now we've got a new audit history entry, and let's expand that. So now we get the advantage of being able to see that status ID has changed from 2 to 1 and priority ID from 1 to 3, but we can also see what that means, that we've got the full kind of reference data information as well, that it's gone from in progress to not started, and it's gone from a low priority to a high priority. So now we've got a lot more information in our audit trail about exactly what's changed in our case and who's done it at what time. Okay, so that was Fast Start for your start forms part 2. We've shown how easy it can be to add a relatively complex concept of field level audit to your designs, thanks to Dataless Components. See you next time.